Disclaimer: the views expressed by the host of Insider Exchange do not necessarily represent those of our clients, sponsors, partners, or guests and should not be considered investment advice in any way. Similarly, the views and opinions of our guests and clients do not necessarily reflect those of our hosts or on our platform. Nothing shared on this platform should be read as constituting investment advice of any kind on the part of Insider Exchange. Any of its hosts, guests, partners, or sponsors trading and investing carry varying levels of risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Please ensure you fully understand the risk and take appropriate care to manage your risk. We strongly advise that you obtain independent financial, legal, and tax advice from regulated professionals and institutions before proceeding with investing decisions. Can I go and play now?
So how was Formula One weekend? Chinese Grand Prix.
Well, hey.
There's a podium.
No, I mean, the first one for Lewis and Red, and Ferrari didn't mess up the strategy. And truthfully, they got to the grid, which, to be clear, McLaren did not.
You see, they made it. See, I told you.
So winner, Chinese dinner, man. This was proper.
I think, and it might be too soon to call it, but perhaps the Ferrari curse and the Kardashian curse are cancelling each other out. Maybe this is what's happening. Let's get the show on the road. The rest we can figure out. Let's kick things off. Let's get the show on the road.
98 are currently collapsing.
Privilege of welcoming one of our good friends into studio.
So not even Buffett listens to Buffett. Sue me, China, if you must.
1 or 22 on AC, but you're not getting that at home.
And there's quite a bit to discuss.
The stock is cheap.
The last podcast I did.
Introduce me.
I'm Jimmy Moyaha.
And I'm Simon Brown.
Welcome to Insider Exchange.
Hello and welcome to Insider Exchange, the show where our producer hates us and gives us enormously difficult challenges, all while dangling treats in front of us, straight into useful updates, because we have 8 minutes, not enough time, and the clock has already started. Si?
We don't get to see the treats first.
We're flying blind here.
We're getting a new mayor in Joburg.
Okay.
Not me. You?
I haven't applied, but I'm...
No, you don't apply for this.
You don't have to apply, okay.
They're so desperate, they just walk down a queue and say, you dude, like you need to come here.
Which is interesting because...
I tried to count. I asked my ChatGPT.
Yeah, how many have we had?
It was like lots. It fell over. It actually weirdly said Helen Ziller was the last mayor.
This is like ABSA and its CEOs. Speaking of ABSA, we finally got colour into that comp package for Kenny Fihla.
Yeah. So not so much. What, a little under 100 million?
That's the signing bonus. That excludes the rest of it.
But the Standard Bank execs got 500 million just for last year.
They did, but I had a look at this comp structure and I kind of broke it down. Well, it was broken down in the annual financials and in the reports. And the nice thing about it is you've got an indication of how much of it was actual salary, how much of it was a share incentive, and it's quite interesting. I mean, we'll put it up as part of this conversation, of course, but like you said, just under 100 million, 98 odd million rands of that was a cash-based buyout and a share-based buyout. Look, if I had shares from the competitor, I would also want you to buy me out of there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And here's the fun thing. They always think we won't know. It's like Vodacom haven't told us how much the Plicor. We know it's going to.
You have to disclose it.
It's coming, guys.
It's
coming.
just a matter of when.
Tell us.
Yeah, but look, 148 million, I mean, that in your first year, obviously some of these incentives won't repeat themselves, but it's nice to finally get color as to, okay, now we can see some of the driving factors behind that decision.
Yeah, 100%. So a whole bunch of data last week. I'm going to actually start with Chinese House Price Index, which was negative again for February. It has been negative every month, bar one, since April 2022.
Wow. That's 4 years almost.
If you have a Chinese friend who bought a house, you should send them a little bit of sympathy because they're underwater.
Or they should just come buy a house in South Africa.
No,
our property market seems to be booming.
Yeah, okay. T's and C's. PCE inflation looking poor. GDP looking poor. Trump telling the world they must come and save his straits. What about the pottery barn rule? You broke it, you pay for it.
Look, I've seen that in a lot of Chinese-based shops. I don't know if I've seen it on. I don't know if I've seen it on houses, but there's a lot of data coming out this week as well. If we look ahead to
Yes.
our own inflation data, we've also got interest rates coming out of the US this week. I don't know how much
GDP last week.
I don't know who cares
ourselves.
about US interest rates at this point other than Jerome Powell. Certainly not Donald Trump.
But we've got Japan as well. We've not also got ECB and BA loads. I mean, and our own GDP last week, which was at 1.1, which is below both Treasury and SAPO. Awkward.
Very strange, right? What Trump does care about is the fact that South Africa is amongst 60 countries, including the likes of the United Kingdom, China, Singapore, Switzerland, Russia, Brazil, and the whole of the EU, currently being investigated by the Office of U.S. Trade Representatives over actions in relation to the importation of goods produced by forced labor. This is tariffs again. So remember when Trump said tariffs have to be under... So the court ruling was that he couldn't just do it without legislation. Yes. So now he's reverted back to finding existing articles of legislation that give him the power to do so. And one such is Section 301 of the Trade Act of 1974 in the United States that he is then using to then investigate the goods that the U.S. imports that were produced under forced labor. I wonder who defines forced labor, because I would argue us being forced to listen to President Trump is forced labor.
Yeah. So I got a thing on tariffs, right? So Trump is busy breaking the global economy. How does he fix it? Oh, magnanimous, no tariffs.
But there's tariffs. There's always tariffs. We don't know what's going on.
Yeah, okay. Oil reserves. So how much are they releasing? 400 million barrels, which is 4 days oil. But T's and C's, we've only lost about 16 million a day out of the Straits. So it's about 25 days at that rate. So we can kind of plug. So we've got to let's call it 3 weeks of oil that's being released. It's not happening the same everywhere. Prices have not come down. In fact, it's 104 this morning for Brent. And some of it, for example, the US is releasing it over 120 days. Is Trump trying to tell us something that he's not trying to tell us something? And I saw a lot of people saying, why? Guys, you got strategic reserve. This is why.
Speaking of things that don't really know why they're happening, the South African Post Office liquidation. The business rescue practitioners have announced that they are looking towards filing liquidation proceedings for the South African Post Office. Everybody and their uncle have come out with, no, we can't liquidate the post office, including ministers saying, no, we're still in the process of renegotiating and critical conversations with the government to finance the 3.8 billion rand shortfall, etc., etc., etc. There was no mention of state-owned entity bailouts in the budget speech.
Correct.
So I don't know where people are getting the confidence that we're going to be able to bail out the post office when nothing's really happened over the last year. This is a conversation we've been having for more than a year right now about the post office needing to be bailed out, and nothing's happened.
Yeah, and ministers must sit down. So, the president said a water crisis committee hasn't met yet in a month. Waiting for rain. TSM LNG risks. LNG is a problem. So apparently urea, which is an input into fertilizer along with nitrogen, you make it from LNG. It comes from the Middle East. We can't get it out. LNG is all over the place. I remember when we all discovered, what was it we discovered? That dioxide or something from Odessa when Ukraine got invaded. Man, there's all these downstream things that are going to hurt. Aluminium prices skyrocketing.
Look, the TSM conversation as well. I mean, the semiconductor market out of Taiwan specifically relies on LNG gas for production of the semiconductors.
Yes.
Now, the Strait of Hormuz being closed limits the LNG supply that way, which interestingly enough, Iran may or may not have said that it's only closed to Israel and the US and their allies. To the rest of the world, it's technically still open. This war is so crazy because it's being waged on so many different fronts, some of them on social media. I mean, I saw a post on social media, the Secretary of War, quickly, while I have time, Secretary of War in the United States saying that they'd killed the new Ayatollah in Iran. There was a tweet or a post from the new Ayatollah saying that Benjamin Netanyahu was dead. Then Benjamin Netanyahu posted a photo of himself in a coffee shop. It's all crazy. I don't know what part of the update that is.
Quick thing, the one set of boats that is not worried about the straits being closed, fishing boats.
Fishing boats. See, fishing industry, good time to be in.
Fearless.
We have 43 seconds for me to tell you about Honda's loss for the first time in 70 years. Honda Fihla, the Japanese manufacturer, is going to make a 4.3 or around $4.3 billion loss. First time since 1957 that this company is going to report a loss.
I love Hondas. I've had 2 of them.
They're reliable. But how tough is the economy that companies that are this old are now forecasting losses? I mean, Nissan was the other Japanese automotive company
They've been killed by the Chinese.
That's it.
And one of the Mahindras has sold 10,000 vehicles in 500 days or something stupid.
It's crazy. Nobody knows what to make sense of it. But what we do know is we've earned a treat. That's useful updates.
Oh, castanastas.
How do you feel about these?
Oh, I love them.
And we move on to our deep dive. We are diving into valuations. We're trying to figure out in this crazy world that we live in with all the war economics that we've dived into previously, whether or not valuations even matter. Do they matter, Si?
They always matter.
To who?
Well, they matter at the pointy end when stuff gets real. But right now, no one seems to care about valuations. And I give you, I mean, we've got examples going extreme both directions. In the one sense, we've got the likes of, let's take NVIDIA, who's chugging along and making money and going sideways for the better part of a long time, and just becoming cheap, whereas the stock should, I mean, what did they do? 60 plus increases in everything. And the market's like, yeah, we're not going anywhere with that. And then just generally, I mean, even the Mag 7s broadly have come under pressure, but we see SaaS stocks. It's become almost a meme rather than a valuation. Now, at some point, they have to matter, surely. I mean, like otherwise.
This is the thing. I thought that as well, Si, but if you look at just the way things have been trading, right, and you look at how much sentiment has been priced in over time, markets have been taking in more and more sentiment and more and more. I mean, take the oil price, for example. We're currently at around $103 a barrel.
No one cares.
No one cares that we're there. We released 400 million barrels of strategic reserves from the IEA. The G7 countries also want to release their own strategic reserves in an effort to quell the price. I happened to be up at 1 o'clock this morning when Asian session was kicking off, and the oil price briefly, and I say briefly, I mean almost down to a 5-minute chart, spiked down below $100 and then just went back up.
Yeah.
So how do we...
I mean, if I look at markets since the attack, which is what, 2 weeks, 11 trading days, we're down 10%, S&P 4-ish, 5, NASDAQ 6 or 7. Like we are staring down like the barrel of a gun, and the person who's going to save us is Trump. I mean, you could be more scared, but it would have to involve like naked clowns and lions or something.
Which again doesn't fix the situation. Also doesn't mean that if you're looking at the naked clowns that Trump might not be one of them.
Well, yeah.
Like nothing. And I think that's the frustration from an investor standpoint, right? The other thing that makes me question valuations is you'll see the amount of volatility and liquidity that is in the market, right?
Liquidity, yeah.
From a day to day, I mean, you and I catch up more than beyond just this podcast. And each time we catch up, the market is either up 1%, down 3%, or sideways 5%. And you kind of don't really know which way it's being pulled at the moment. And you also don't know what, I think the markets are trying as much to discount President Trump's comments and actions, but the more we do that, it seems the more we anger the big Nazi man and the more he comes out wanting attention. And that, I think that frustrates the markets as well.
Absolutely. And I mean, he hasn't done it in a little while where he will go and love on or hate on a company. Remember when he hated on Intel and then squeezed the oak for 10 billion of stock?
Yeah, but he's realized he can just hate broadly on countries rather than specific companies. You know what I thought of as we were preparing for this chat? I thought of, you know, when you go into the new year and you've got these resolutions and you're like, new year, new me, or you get a haircut and you're like, new haircut, new me kind of thing. I feel like Trump wakes up and he's like, new week, new me, because every week it's something new.
New hamburger. Agreed. So let's go back to the valuations. We haven't even touched on the unlisted space and OpenAI and Anthropic. I mean, OpenAI, what their last round was almost 800 billion, and they're doing like 20 billion of revenue. So, hey, what the heck, you know? Numbers are getting crazy. Now, I mean, ultimately, they have to matter, but we see it all over. Now, we've seen, for example, Sasol running up at 200. My argument with Sasol is, have we not forgotten the other half of Sasol, which is chemicals, which is still in the absolute dwang and looking ugly, etc. Markets are, and I want to say cheap money, but the money's not that cheap right now compared to what it was 4 or 5 years ago. So it's just the market, it's just folks saying, we want action here, and we don't mind, we don't care, we're not worried about the risk, which is insane.
It is, right? And especially if you think about, like, the typical factors that go into valuations, right? We've touched on sentiment being a good one. Fundamentals form part of that, and that's what you're alluding to around the fact that performances and whether or not companies meet their targets and their metrics. But we've seen time and time again, the NVIDIA example was a great example that you mentioned. 70% increase over and above what we expected, and things were just looking exceptionally good for that company. And the market was like, meh.
Just didn't care.
That's it. So what do markets care about then, Si? What do valuations then start to take into account?
Narrative, story. I mean,
Whose story?
Well, okay, the good point. I mean, whose story? So there needs to be a story to be spun. And if you can spin it, you can, I suppose. But so excuse me. I mean, where has the US money that was all in the Mag 7s, etc., flowed to? Because it hasn't gone to software stocks because so it's gone to some oil majors, but even that, not so much. You look at the XLE ETF, or is it XLE? LEX, whichever one, XLE, I think, energy one. It hasn't done, I mean, it's run, but nothing particular hard. So, and to be clear, people aren't sitting on piles of cash. So, has it gone then to private markets, private equity, private credit? We know what's potentially brewing in the private credit space.
I can agree to a certain extent that it would have, but remember, large asset managers, the likes of the BlackRocks, the State Streets, the PICs and that have a limitation on how much they can allocate to private credit and private markets. There's a limitation. There has to be some of the monies placed in listed markets and public markets, right? So we would still have to factor that in. That would still have to be something to say that some of it has to be somewhere. Fine, it's sitting in gold, but it's not actually sitting in gold because
gold's not that big.
It's not moving, right? Gold, yes, we can agree. The run up from 2,000 maybe to 3,000 or from 3,000 to 5,000 was a huge move.
Sure.
Nobody's discounting that. But in times like this where we tapped the 5,000 mark almost towards the end of last year with last year's factors, since then, new factors have emerged that have increased the risk that should push you into safe haven, and gold hasn't gone above that 5,400 it once tested.
It hasn't, and I'm busy trying to, because, I mean, gold in of itself is 3, gold's like 50 trillion. Okay. Nice,
yeah.
Big, but not
unheard of, not unnatural, not somewhere where, I mean, if gold, you said gold is 50 trillion.
Value total at 5,000.
So you're saying NVIDIA is 10% of the gold market. See what I mean? See what I mean with valuations?
Yeah, no, I 100%. It like makes little or no sense. And it comes back to, I mean, so there is a world in which this entire war in Iran is over. Although I must say, I did see Iran's proposal for peace, and it's exactly what I thought they should propose, which is...
Wait, I think we've seen the same one. Which one have you seen?
All US troops to leave the Middle East within 30 days.
Oh, that's the only one. There was a list.
There's a list.
Yes,
that's the one, because if you looked at Iran, it's just bases, et cetera. And I mean, and I mean, it didn't quite, but it's like, and give us a bomb.
That was, and we know that those demands the US will never concede to. I think in our heart of hearts, as a global population, we know that the United States will not allow a country like Iran to remove them from the Middle East, where they've spent decades building those bases and building that footprint, right? So we know that's not really going to happen. So I guess indefinitely we'll figure out where the war takes us. But if we look at some other factors, so things like narrative investing seem to come into the fold. I mean, artificial intelligence, that conversation's still growing, and we're still investing around that theme. I know we've died down a little bit on the EV theme and on the space economy and anything to do with Elon Musk at the moment. For whatever reason, but I think it's probably because we've got wars happening throughout the rest of the world. And interestingly enough, something that's going to come up in our Make It Make Sense is the shift that's happening, right? How quickly narratives are changing, how quickly people are shifting stance, shifting policy. I mean, take, for example, most of the people obviously are in the United States. Marco Rubio, when President Trump was being elected in his first term, wasn't a Trump fan. Now suddenly wants to be the next president of the country and wants Trump to endorse that. So those kinds of shifts, we see them happen in politics every day. But to start to see them happen in markets and in investment thinking, that's worrying.
Yeah, have we just... I mean, are we in and I hate the phrase, but a post-truth world? I learned this weekend, Ted Cruz is actually Rafael Ted Cruz. He's actually Canadian of Cuban descent. And the man hates on immigrants.
You learned a lot in this weekend, and I was wondering where that was going.
But we're in this, and to be clear, it's Trump. I mean, you remember when presidents didn't lie, and then Trump and Boris Johnson, not Yeltsin, wrong Boris, and so on and so on. And it is now, and has it filtered through? Is there just, because it goes back to what I said a while ago. The idea that there's too much money sloshing around is not true in a higher interest rate environment, which is where we currently are sitting. So,
well, technically, if you've pumped money into economies, right? So if you think about the stimulus packages that we've seen throughout the world, the amount of new money that's just been printed, we had this conversation before where I remember asking what then underpins these numbers.
Yeah.
And we couldn't answer that. And I suppose it brings us back to, from a valuation perspective, what then underpins your valuations if your fundamentals start to misalign.
Yeah.
Like the Sasol one, for example. Not saying that Sasol's a bad company, but like you're saying, it does have a whole other business that is struggling along that would be factored in.
Yeah, so right now it's meme stock, Sasol, in many senses, and it'll at some point come back to earth, and that might be at prices significantly higher or lower. The flip side is that then we've got South African stocks which are like really that, like they're cheap. So there's the other side of that equation,
and they're running hot still. Mm-hmm. Even at the levels that they're at, they're still cheap, but they have run so hard.
Yeah.
The other flip side, as we wrap up the conversation, is we're still seeing that companies are reporting corporate record profits. CEO pay is at record levels. As we said, stock prices.
US margins are at records.
Things just, and this is, I think for me, when I get that we can't base everything on what the fundamentals say from a balance sheet perspective. There is an element of sentiment. There is an element of risk that is then priced in based on the macro conditions. But sometimes, in some cases, it starts to feel like we're letting sentiment run away with the narrative, letting sentiment drive all of the movement and forgetting that actually at the end of the day, these companies are still companies. We're not, I mean, there was a time where NVIDIA, we were pricing them on just what we hoped they would achieve, right? And then every time we extend the hope, bring it back to reality when they report. Extend the hope, bring it back to... Sounds like a budget speech that we deliver from a South African perspective every year.
Yeah, actually, yes. And it is, to your point, I mean, we're suspended from reality. Isn't that what markets sometimes do best?
But for how long, Si?
Yeah, until they don't.
Until they don't?
No, until they don't. I mean, that is not a particularly thrilling answer. But
no, but it's the truth.
It is. I mean, because I remember .com. I remember the commodity bubble in sort of 05 to 07.
Financial crash in 08.
Yeah,
the rebound in 09.
We've been down this road
The
before.
Pandemic in 2020.
The key thing, and our markets are, not so much our market, but I mean, US markets are, as I said, sitting at highest margins, sitting at record PE elevated levels, i.e. priced for perfection. And I happen to glance around and I don't see the perfect, man.
I don't see it either.
Yeah. Okay, so what you're saying is pumpkin seeds. Well, when things get tough, you want
pumpkin seeds, gooseberries, and I don't know what else.
Water bullets.
Okay.
Maybe some petrol, but hell, no one can afford that anymore.
Can't afford the petrol. We can stockpile it, but apparently that's illegal as well. So, folks, let us know your thoughts. We'd love to hear your thoughts around whether or not you see market valuations making sense, whether or not the numbers are adding up, and what seems to be driving some of the market decisions from our side. Some of them really don't make sense. And on that note, we're going to leave the deep dive on that note because we need to get into Make It Make Sense. And we're wrapping things up with Make It Make Sense. We try and make sense of things that are happening around the world and in South Africa. And so far, we're terrible at it. So let's continue with that. First thing we're trying to make sense of this week, which I don't know if we need to make sense of, because I also think it makes sense of itself, given that it involves Orange Mussolini, is Russian oil. Remember when Russian oil was banned and terrible, and you weren't allowed to buy Russian oil because they were waging a war against the Ukraine? Well, it turns out, as it would be, that if you are Orange Mussolini and you're playing 4D chess, not 3D chess, but 4D chess, there is method to the madness, right? So you start a war in Iran. Mm-hmm. Then it causes the prices of oil to go up when the Strait of Hormuz gets closed. Then you go in and say, we need the prices to come down. So we're going to tell all of the people that weren't buying the Russian oil to now suddenly start buying Russian oil so that we can get the oil price down. So you've lifted the sanctions there.
Yes.
And in return, how Russia repays the United States from that perspective is by providing Iran with intelligence data on where to hit America within the Middle East, given that they might not know all the targets. So the long and short of it, Si, that I want you to make sense of is Donald Trump just financed his own war against America via Russia and Iran.
Correct, right? I mean, that's just how it is.
So Russian oil is only bad when Trump says it's bad, basically. Other than that, it's great.
Well, no, I mean, Biden initially said it was bad. I mean, it goes back to Biden. But, I mean, there is a point. I mean, it's quite wild that I mean, it seems to appear that Trump and his friends went barreling into a war in the Middle East with
no planning,
no nothing,
no thought, no structure,
pizza because Pizzagate. But I mean, apart from that, just nothing,
just nothing,
which is astounding.
You would think that would be the most baffling thing to come out of the United States, but apparently it's not. The next thing that we're going to make sense of, still Trump related. While we're at it, we're going to go 3 for 3, Si. So part 2 is Trump is threatening to revoke the licenses of news agencies that are reporting on the war in a certain light.
Oh, and he was suggesting death penalties, and the chair of the FCC or whatever it is threatening to shut down news companies because they're not reporting a way that he likes.
That's it.
You know what? I mean, I wasn't around, so I can't be sure, so correct me if wrong, but I'm sure Stalin wasn't even so, like, he said bad, kill him. Stalin would be like, and then he would die.
I think at this point we just appreciate consistency, which the only consistency we're getting is inconsistency. But that being said, I don't know if we should be worried, given that if he does threaten to shut down news agencies, is he going to close down YouTube? Is Trump going to shut down YouTube and we're not going to have a podcast? Oh, my word.
Well, he will for America, but he won't for the other services. So there's the other fun fact, whereas America could all be sitting there and YouTube's all Tucker Carlson and the Rogan man, and they think, the rest of the world's left us.
I want to see what that looks like.
Ugly.
The other thing that we're trying to make sense of, 3 for 3, and I say 3 for 3 because it somehow is linked to President Trump, is his current choice of Attorney General, Pam Bondi.
Yeah.
$175 million is the price tag. It relates to a mansion that was purchased by her husband, but the down payment funds were transferred from an offshore entity that she was investigating.
Oof.
That's the summary.
Yeah, I mean, but
obviously shell companies involved, etc., etc., etc. But a company that was on the radar of the Department of Justice.
Unbanned in America?
I don't know, but guys, shout out to Unbanned. They would gladly lend their services that way if that were to be the case. We know we've got some of the best investigative journalists, but I also think this is a little below Unbanned's pay grade. It's very simple because everything was documented, Si. Everything had to be filed. The paper trail is there. Well, it's an open and shut case. Unbanned's got bigger things to work on. This is an open and shut case. There was a transfer. It was made. The house was bought. End of story.
Yeah, and this is it, right? Is that it's just the shamelessness of it, both from our own politicians and it turns out Americans.
It turns out everybody, right? You mentioned shameless, and perhaps we'll wrap it up on this note with this extra make it make sense. There is a South African couple that has moved to the United States that once had franchises in South Africa and were a part of a reality TV show, Real Housewives of Pretoria. right? Husband and wife duo, they then opened up Tammy Taylor franchises. There was Tammy Taylor debacles around that and the licensing rights. Tammy Taylor in the US eventually sued in South Africa, etc., etc., etc. That story's been in the news before. This couple's resurfaced in the news in America for having stolen, swindled.
For having not scanned.
Not scanned. $5,000 worth of groceries, including fancy water.
Hey, I told you guys, like when that not scanning comes to South Africa, like they're testing it in Cape Town. I don't know why, but like it's not going to work.
I've used it before. I've used it in London many years ago. So it's been around for a while in other countries. And it's very much an honesty system, hey? I don't know what we make of that.
I'm very honest. I'm honest. So.
Yeah, but look, it's interesting because there's different ways to do it, right? So there's doing it at the till point, and then there's ways where you just throw the items in the trolley, and by the time you get to the door, it's already sorted out. I think the only way...
Yeah, so that's like Amazon Go. That's what Checkers was doing. But so Amazon Go would just like spy on you. Checkers, the one down in Cape Town, you apparently scan and then you put it into your...
Yes, which is the same as Unique.
Have you changed your mind?
No, but have you been to Unique at Checkers?
True. I have been to
Unique. You just pop it in the bag and it already tags
but there's
it.
always like 7 staff.
Yes.
I mean, like one customer, 7 staff.
So this is what I think you could probably do if you want that system to work, is have it bill when the items leave the door.
Yeah.
Right? So not at the till point,
That's
because between till point and door, between till point and door, things can be switched and all of that sort of stuff. It makes it a bit more inconvenient because now we have to deal with tap systems that require access codes and all of that. So maybe you have a pre-authorized card, or you load some money onto your Checkers card kind of thing, and then it deducts from there automatically. There's ways around it to mitigate the crime factor of it. But also South Africa is going to give you huge pushback on whether or not this eliminates jobs.
Well, fair point.
It's a whole other story. It's a whole other conversation. It's not what we're trying to make sense of today, though. Perhaps we'll try another day. But that's where we're going to leave this particular show. That's where we're going to leave these conversations because, really, yet again, we failed to make sense of things. Hang on. No, we haven't. We made sense of the Russian oil.
Yeah, Russian oil made...
We made sense of Pam Bondi.
Yeah, and I mean, Trump is just Putin's lapdog.
Very careful choice of words there. Well done, Si.
There are videos out there. I mean, I've never seen them. I hope I never see them.
We all hope we never see those videos. But that's where we're going to leave the show, folks. Before we go, we're going to leave you with an unfiltered opinion because, well, that's what we do. This week's unfiltered opinion of the week is... what side hustle is too much, Si?
Yeah.
Piqued your interest, haven't I?
Too much? What, paying too much? Too much like hard work?
Well, it depends on whose side of the side hustle you're sitting on. So we know things like OnlyFans exist and the foot one and all of that, right? But...
I did not know about the foot one, but carry on.
This is a potential side hustle. We'll circle back to the other one.
Do not drag me into your dark places. Carry on.
We'll circle into... So, I want to get your thoughts around whether or not you would do this as a husband, knowingly or unknowingly, right? I'll read the scenario and you can fill me in. In Thailand, a wife caught her police officer husband cheating. He refused to leave his mistress. So the wife came up with a plan and put a 30,000 baht monthly price tag for rental into a contract and gave the contract to the mistress. The mistress gladly accepted the contract and said money wasn't an issue anyway. Now, first things first, are you happy with being priced by your wife? Knowingly or unknowingly? And secondly, in this scenario, would you pay the money if you were the one being given the rental contract?
In T's and C's, I don't know. We have to inspect things. But I have questions here. Like, could I rent you out? To your partner. I mean, like, where's
you'd be renting me out from my partner.
No.
So
I'm renting you to her. I mean, this is just a contract. You are assuming that this stuff all goes one way, the other way, and not this way. I'm assuming that apparently I can like rent people to people, and I'm thinking this is my kind of side hustle. Absolutely. Put a little CV together, some flyers at the robot. You can rent Jimmy. I'm game.
Does it require the consent of the individual being rented?
You get a cut.
How much of a cut? I'm the one doing all the work.
Okay, fair point. 7.5% ex-VAT.
7.5% expat, folks. That's what I'm worth to Simon because he's pimping me out. That's the unfiltered opinion of the week. Investing isn't hard. Just try it.
Disclaimer. The views expressed by the host of Insider Exchange do not necessarily represent those of our clients, sponsors, partners, or guests and should not be considered investment advice in any way. Similarly, the views and opinions of our guests and clients do not necessarily reflect those of our hosts or on our platform. Nothing shared on this platform should be read as constituting investment advice of any kind on the part of Insider Exchange. Any of its hosts, guests, partners, or sponsors trading and investing carry varying levels of risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Please ensure you fully understand the risk and take appropriate care to manage your risk. We strongly advise that you obtain independent financial, legal, and tax advice from regulated professionals and institutions before proceeding with investing decisions. Can I go and play now?